Welcome back, Focus Learners, to another deep dive on The Explainer. You know, it's wild to think that a gland literally the size of a pea is the undisputed master controller of your entire endocrine system. Today, we are taking a rigorous, zero-detail-skipped journey into the pituitary gland. We're going to unpack exactly how this tiny organ orchestrates human survival, from its kind of bizarre embryological origins to its unique wiring, and we'll cap it off with a targeted walkthrough of its 8 major hormones. So grab your notes, get comfortable, and let's decode the master gland.
Okay, here is our roadmap. We'll track the gland from its creation in utero, map its wiring to the brain, and finally decode those exact hormonal outputs.
Section 1. Pituitary Embryology and Origins. Let's get right into it.
So, starting with the foundation, the pituitary isn't just one uniform blob of tissue. It's actually a total mashup of 2 entirely different embryonic structures. On one hand, the posterior pituitary actually forms from a downward evagination of neural crest cells. These drop down from the floor of the third ventricle and leave a little recess we call the median eminence. But on the flip side, the anterior pituitary rises upward. It's an upward evagination of epithelial ectoderm coming straight from the oropharynx. So literally 2 totally different tissues colliding to form one master gland.
Now that upward portion is called Rathke's pouch. Eventually, it separates. The anterior surface becomes the pars distalis, the posterior surface becomes the pars intermedius, and the pars tuberalis kind of reaches up the stalk. But here is the absolutely crucial clinical takeaway. If that pouch fails to separate completely, it leaves behind a craniopharyngeal duct. And why does that matter? Because that duct can be a hidden source of recurrent meningitis. Oh, and one more foundational rule to keep in your back pocket. Functionally, this entire gland sits completely outside the blood-brain barrier.
Section 2. Wiring the master gland. Since it's built from 2 different tissues, it connects to the brain in 2 totally different ways. Let's talk about the anterior portal circulation, which is honestly an incredible microscopic relay race. It's actually one of only 2 portal systems in the entire human body, the other one being your liver. Here's how it works. Neurons in the tuber cinerarium release hormones in these rhythmic pulses. Those hormones travel down the tubero-hypophyseal tract into the median eminence capillaries. From there, the pituitary stalk portal circulation sweeps them right down into the anterior pituitary capillary bed, basically telling the local cells, hey, release your own hormones now.
Now, the posterior side is a completely different story. These hormones aren't pumped through a portal blood system at all. They're synthesized way higher up in the magnocellular neuroendocrine neurons, specifically in the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei. From there, hormones like ADH and oxytocin are literally just carried straight down the neural axons in the supraoptic hypophyseal tract. They just travel right down the stalk and get released directly from the nerve endings.
Section 3. PAMC, ACTH, and prolactin. Now that the house is built and wired, let's tour the first set of specific anterior hormones.
First up, POMC. It's best to think of POMC not as a finished hormone, but as a massive 241 amino acid mother molecule. Synthesized in the anterior corticotroph cells, this huge polypeptide chain is actually embedded with several different critical sequences. You've got alpha MSH, beta endorphin, and absolutely crucial for our daily biological clocks, ACTH.
So your body uses enzymes, almost like molecular scissors, to carve ACTH straight out of that POMC precursor. ACTH is this fast-acting 39 amino acid hormone under the control of CRH, and its main gig is orchestrating your daily wakefulness. It drives a massive diurnal peak in cortisol just as the sun comes up, literally jolting you awake. Then it gives you a secondary, smaller peak in the late afternoon, and of course, massive spikes whenever you're hit with acute physical stress.
Next up is prolactin, and the rhythmic complexity here is just wild. It pulses at totally different frequencies depending on the phase of the menstrual cycle. We're talking about 9 pulses every 24 hours in the late luteal phase, ramping up to about 14 pulses in the late follicular phase. And it has a strict daily rhythm too. It peaks right before you wake up, usually between 5 and 7 a.m., hits a mid-morning nadir, and naturally maintains its highest baseline levels in females and throughout pregnancy.
But how on earth does the brain manage that crazy rhythm? Well, prolactin is highly unique. It's the only pituitary hormone that is kept under a constant inhibitory lock and key by the hypothalamus. And that primary inhibitory control? It's dopamine. Dopamine is basically standing on the brake pedal. If you were to cut the pituitary stalk, prolactin levels would absolutely skyrocket because that dopamine brake is suddenly gone.
There are some releasing factors out there, like TRH and VIP, but their exact physiological roles aren't totally nailed down yet. Dopamine is definitely the star of the show here.
Section 4. Growth hormone and TSH. Let's look at the hormones governing physical growth and your metabolic rates.
Growth hormone basically works the night shift. While you sleep, it releases in about 5 to 10 massive pulsatile secretions. And during those pulses, it does two main things. It triggers your liver to secrete IGF-1, which handles all the systemic effects throughout your body, and it directly stimulates the epiphyseal end plates on your long bones, physically telling them to grow.
Now, the control of growth hormone is a brilliant balancing act. In the hypothalamus, you have the arcuate nucleus releasing GHRH to aggressively hit the gas, stimulating secretion, synthesis, and gene transcription. But then right next door, the paraventricular nucleus uses somatostatin to hit the brake. Somatostatin suppresses release and only release. Add in hunger signals from your GI tract like ghrelin, which stimulate release, and you've got this beautifully complex loop tied right to your body's nutritional state.
You start to notice a really interesting dual control pattern shared across the anterior pituitary. Growth hormone is stimulated by GHRH, while the thyrotrophic glycoprotein TSH is stimulated by TRH. But what do they share? Somatostatin acts as a universal off switch. It suppresses the release of both your growth and your thyroid-stimulating mechanisms.
Section 5. The gonadotropins. Let's briefly touch on the master regulators of the reproductive system. For the gonadotropins, which are FSH and LH, or lutropin, the entire reproductive cascade of the human body hinges on one absolute master switch, GnRH. It's fascinating because this driver is synthesized primarily all the way up in the preoptic area of the hypothalamus, and its strict pulsatile release dictates human fertility.
Section 6. Posterior hormones, ADH and oxytocin. Finally, we round out our tour by heading back to the neural tissue side of the posterior pituitary.
First up here is ADH, also known as arginine vasopressin. This tiny nanopeptide is ridiculously potent. It binds right to the membrane receptors in your kidneys, massively increasing the permeability of the distal renal tubules. Basically, it rescues and reabsorbs water back into your body to dilute your blood and concentrate your urine. And at the exact same time, it acts as a potent vasoconstrictor, clamping down on blood vessels to keep your blood pressure up.
So, what sets off this powerful alarm? The absolute most potent physiological trigger for ADH is high serum osmolality. In plain English, when your blood gets dangerously salty. Less potent triggers would be things like low intravascular volume or a glucocorticoid deficiency. On the flip side, exogenous glucocorticoids and adrenergic drugs act as inhibitors, basically cutting the alarm off entirely. Finally, we complete our roster with oxytocin. It's a tiny but mighty nonapeptide that acts as both a neurotransmitter and a hormone. Its main source is the hypothalamus, where it just hangs out stored right in the nerve endings of the neurohypothesis. But when called upon, it orchestrates incredibly powerful biology, driving milk letdown during breastfeeding and triggering the intense uterine contractions of labor.
And that wraps up our comprehensive tour of the master gland. When you look at its dual tissue origins and that incredibly precise wiring, it is just an absolute architectural marvel. It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? How is it that these microscopic portal networks and these tiny hyperspecific chains of amino acids pulsing in the dark while we sleep hold the literal keys to human survival, growth, and reproduction? It's simply mind-blowing. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the incredible machinery of the human body.